Okay, welcome everybody. We've got a few people just trickling in at the back, but thank you for coming to our cropping breakout session today. So this is a couple of hour session where we're going to hear from four speakers, very talented and experienced speakers, and so I'm looking forward to hearing from them. If you're needing to take a phone call or stretch your legs or anything, please feel free to do so. Just head up the back. And that's probably, all I need to say in the way of housekeeping. But we might kick it off. I'll introduce myself first, and then I'm going to introduce the first speaker. So my name's Rebecca Howard. I'm the Acting General Manager for the Northern Yorke Landscape Board, and we are very happy to have you all here today. It's a big event for us, and we're glad to see so many here. Okay. Our first speaker today, and I'm very pleased to present Kate McCabe, is our speaker, Finance Director at McCabe AgCo. So Kate has over 25 years of experience in finance, economics, accounting across the wine, agricultural and food industries. She has held key leadership roles, including corporate treasurer at Yamba Winery, finance director at McCabe AgCo, and accounting project and systems manager at Alltech Lina Australia, where she led the region in their Planet of Plenty sustainability initiative. Currently, Kate manages the function for her family's grain production properties in South Australia and New South Wales, integrating sustainability and natural capital management into their agricultural practices. She also consults for government and industry organisations, providing economic analysis and sustainable agricultural projects. She holds a Bachelor of Commerce and is a certified practising accountant, and is a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. She's committed to addressing the dual challenge of growing global food demand while reducing greenhouse gas emissions and adapting to climate change. Kate is going to share her insights on sustainability strategies, offering perspectives from both on-farm practices and industry-wide initiatives. So please welcome Kate.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you to the Landscape Board for having me to this cropping stream today. I'm going to focus on the practical side of sustainability and emissions reporting, what it means on farm, how to make it manageable, and how to get real value from it. So background, you've heard a bit from Rebecca. More recent experience in finance, which I've combined with agriculture. I did actually grow up on a farm, had absolutely no interest in agriculture whatsoever. I couldn't wait to get down to what I thought was the big smoke in Adelaide and study, and saw myself in a finance corporate banking role in perhaps Sydney or New York. Life took a very different direction when I married the farmer next door. And so that's when my interest in farming really started. And as Rebecca said, that multifaceted challenge that we're faced with of feeding the world while we're faced with a warming climate. And that's what really prompted me to study a master's in global food and ag business, and there I focused on greenhouse gas emissions, natural capital, and development economics. I love what I do at the moment, where I get to combine some practical experience on farm with my probably corporate accounting and finance background, but then also my work and interest in research in my consulting work. So it's a really exciting balance for me at the moment, and I love being here today talking to you about it. So our farming business, predominantly we're cropping, so around Hamley Bridge in the lower north of South Australia. But we also farm in Grenfell in the central west of New South Wales, and more recently we have an interest in irrigation property in the Mallee. I'll share our business's approach to emissions and carbon and my take on the value proposition. But I'll also focus on the compliance burden, as it's a really hot topic at the moment. And I'll say from the start, I think if reporting is a burden, we need to change how we approach it. When I first started looking at emissions data and how we're going to report on it, it really felt like okay, another compliance box we're going to have to tick. But we realised that it could be a tool to improve how we run the business, and that's what I want to talk about today, that shift from burden to benefit. So I think this morning we've heard about national and international drivers, carbon markets, finance sector expectations, the supply chain, and the reality is all of these flow directly to the farm gate, and that's why we have decided to formalise all of our sustainability initiatives, which most farms do most of these. We've just decided to give it a name called our Resilient Farming Project, which is up on the screen. And I think what that shows there, sustainability has long been a priority for our farming business. So back in the 1990s, we began minimum till, and then in 2003, we had our first zero till with our first zero till de-seeder. Then in 2006, we started our chicken manure spreading program. So they were probably some of the first activities. My introduction to emissions in a cropping context, it was probably about 15 years ago when Greg Butler managed Sanfa, and he described carbon or greenhouse gas emissions as waste. And that's something that's really resonated with me. He said, so fertiliser, if it's not applied at the right time or in the right conditions, you're losing it to nitrification. And of course, that also has implications for productivity and profitability. So that's what we always try and focus on. How do we reduce waste? As far as emissions, in 2012, we were part of a DAF-funded project managed by Pinion that looked at the impact of farm management on emissions. But it sort of went quiet there for a while after that, and it wasn't until 2022 that we started using the GAF tool, which I'll talk about later, to measure our emissions, which we do now on an annual basis for each paddock. We've participated in the Landscape Board AgCo Alliance facilitated carbon footprint baseline project going back a few years ago. Thanks, Emma, that was fantastic. And more recently, GPSA have had a baselining project funded by the state government, and both of those have been really helpful just to fill in some gaps and validate the results that we've been calculating ourselves. Lots of other things on here which I'll touch on as we work through. So carbon farming, I probably find in cropping there's always pushback when you say carbon farming, because all people think about is soil sequestration and planting trees, and people can't relate it back to cropping. So just want to make sure we're covering off and talking about reduced emissions as a form of carbon farming. If we look at soil, we have always done 0 to 10 centimetre soil tests, but not the 0 to 30 that you need for soil carbon projects. So we're really keen to get an understanding, but obviously very costly when there isn't a value proposition at the end of it to do those tests. We were part of the National Australia Bank pilot that did some remote sensing that Will talked about earlier. So that was helpful, and that tied in really well with a government-funded project run by Farm Lab, and Ollie Madgett, who you heard from earlier, was part of that. And that took 0 to 60 centimetres soil samples in a number of paddocks, and that was very helpful to ground truth what we had, what the remote sensing was saying. Soil health is a really strong focus for us, with carbon just being one element. With 400 mil rainfall, so it is hard to get really big big changes, but is something we want to keep improving our soil health, understand what the constraints are, and we've recently engaged a soil scientist to help us. We've dug some soil pits, and he's helping us to understand better what those constraints are. So using the soil pits as well as some further physical testing. Some great little tools that are available online. So LookSee, so CSIRO have developed a digital tool to calculate carbon sequestration in soil and tree plantings. So that's for farmers in the room. That's probably a great start to see what it should be. It isn't that granular, so but it gives you an idea of what your soil carbon would be. In terms of vegetation, I guess if we compare our New South Wales properties to our South Australia properties, and just that table there on the right, for Hamley Bridge we can only, and this is just according to LookSee, we could sequester 7 tonnes of carbon per hectare per year, compared to New South Wales where 620 mil rainfall, it's up to 13. So we have looked at that. It's certainly not viable for us to do any projects with that at the moment. What we are interested in though is the nature repair markets. They will be more focused on biodiversity benefits, but soil carbon sequestration is obviously an important consideration as well. Reducing emissions, a really strong focus, and I will talk about it more when we have a look at emissions. We have paid close attention to the CSIRO, GRDC, Australian Grains Baseline Mitigation Assessment Report in developing strategies to reduce our emissions. So in particular there, what we've seen as quite relevant, improving nitrogen use efficiency, innovative practices, localised decision making, and green ammonia fertiliser, which I'll move on to in a moment. Just a really quick recap on emissions and scope 1, 2 and 3, because I will refer to them in the next slide. So I know everyone's probably seen these slides 1,000 times, but scope 3 emissions, so 2 components there, the upstream before farm and then the post farm. So the scope, the upstream, the fertiliser and chemical, the main ones that relate to us, and then the operational on farm, the scope 1 emissions, so directly from fertiliser and lime, residues, and then the scope 2, which are very small component, the grid supplied electricity. I will just be talking about the cradle to farm, so just the upstream and operational. So this just shows our emissions profile for the SA farm, just an average over the last 5 years. It does include our second biggest drought on record and a significant lime program, so we're looking forward to see them dropping off a bit more over the next few years. You can see there, that hasn't come out very well, sorry, but the fertiliser in the purple down the bottom is the biggest component at 45%. So scope 3 is 24%, and then scope 1, 21%. And that's probably why a lot of our practice changes and innovations are focused on those areas. So improving our nitrogen use efficiency. As far as innovative practices, taking our yield mapping that we've been collecting for the last 20 years and not really knowing not doing much with it, but we're using that a lot more now, just to help inform variable rate applications. But there's also soil testing, satellite imagery that feeds into that as well. We've done a few nitrogen trials and the nitrification inhibitor products, so trialled some of those as well. And probably the other one there, localised decision making, is just very important, highlighted in that GRDC report, where and it varies on your location, but also just how your farming business is made up. So for us, we focus on high protein wheats, legumes, canola, but I know other farms in similar climatic conditions, they might have a feedlot, so it makes sense for them to grow barley, which works for their emissions as well. I think these figures would be quite reflective of emissions in South Australia. So the wheat, if we look at that one, and I want you to compare that to the next slide. So our wheat emissions, 210 kilograms of carbon per tonne of wheat produced. And that is very good on a global scale. If we look at, this is from that GRDC CSIRO report that I was talking about, so shows the global emissions intensity for cereals. And obviously 200 is low on the scale there. And there's a few complications around emission factors and which ones are applied. So the methods in our results aren't exactly comparable, but there's still worth looking at them beside each other. So GRDC have calculated Australia average at the green one there, so 300. So in SA, I think we've got such a good story to tell because we have legumes in our rotation with the nitrogen fixing attribute. It means we don't have to use as much synthetic fertiliser, and we have a lot lower emissions intensity. We also use our nitrogen very, very efficiently because we don't have as much nitrification. So I guess here's a reality for farmers. The data load is already heavy. Adding emissions reporting can feel like it's just another spreadsheet, another login, another job that we have to do at the end of the day. Many different stakeholders that we report to wanting data in different formats. So how do we meet their needs and then use this information for better decisions? So the approach that we take is collect data once, use it many times. I'm sure you've heard that many times before, but it does mean on the farm designing systems so the data we collect for compliance also feeds into our sustainability reporting, our supply chain commitments, but then really important, our own decision making. So these numbers, they don't just tick compliance boxes, they also tell us about efficiency on our farms. We've caught input errors, errors from Viterra, or errors right through the supply chain. We've fine-tuned operations and at the same time improved emissions intensity. And all of that's because we've looked at the data in a management context. And I guess the example here, our agronomy data in AgWorld that flows straight into our emissions calculator, saving double entry. It's also used for ISCC compliance, so same data, multiple purposes. Balancing materiality and accuracy is going to be really important when we talk about the verification and compliance burden. I just thought I'd put up the source of our emissions, so the percentages. So you can see there, fertiliser and residues, between them are about 71% of our emissions, and take about 30% of the time for us to do our emissions calculation. If you look at chemical, it takes 60% of the time and accounts for 17% of the emissions. The emissions from chemical actually stay pretty constant year on year, whether it's a drought, whether it's a really wet year. Legumes are a little bit different, but canola and wheat, they actually change about 1% each year. So I think it's going to be so important that we work with the supply chain on how we make this data work, so that we're not making everyone spend a huge amount of time getting things that don't have as big an impact, and creating a really big compliance burden for us. We need practical and efficient solutions. So just an overview of the emissions reporting tools. I've talked about the Greenhouse Gas Accounting Framework, or GGAF. That's what we use because it's Excel based, and we can pull data from AgWorld, and we've set it up to be, I think it takes about 10 minutes per paddock to do the emissions calculation. So we've set it up to be really efficient. We have also looked at AIA and Ruminati. Fantastic to see $6.4 million funding from Zero Net Emissions Ag going into AIA. Really look forward to the day that AgWorld or your whatever farm management system can just send that data to AIA, and AIA sends you back your number. So no duplication of data whatsoever. So I think that's something we can look forward to in the future. Cool Farm tool, have considered that. If you look at the Grain Growers Limited comparisons of tools, it does talk about Cool Farm tool it's a UK-based tool, recognised by global agri-food companies, so Unilever, Nestle, PepsiCo, but it uses international emission factors, so it's not really fit for purpose for Australian conditions. There is a CRC that have adapted it for Australian emission factors. It's not available yet to farmers. Hopefully it will be soon, and really looking forward to that as well. Farm Print is the CSIRO emissions calculator that's been around for quite a while. It's not available to farmers though. And an independent life cycle assessment, just costs associated with that, but is what you would require if you wanted to make a validated claim. At the moment, that would be the way that you would probably need it, depending on the customer's requirements. Just importance of advocacy and research. I can't emphasise that enough. Really looking forward to Janine and Nick talk about the LEAFs project. Very, very exciting. Grain Producers SA, should be a report coming out soon on the emissions baselining project, and we'll be releasing a sustainability roadmap, which is so important to work out how we have collaboration in the supply chain. Zero Net Emissions Ag, obviously research in this area is absolutely critical. And carbon farming outreach program, that has been really important for consultants to get up to speed on the calculators. Just wanted to highlight that distinction between in the supply chain requirements between mandatory climate-related disclosures and where there's low emissions or sustainable grain that gets a premium. I think there's lots of fear around Scope 3 emissions and what will be required. As farmers and as the ag industry, we need to be part of the conversation and help find efficient ways to meet the needs of the supply chain. I think LEAFs, with the goal to baseline 80% of Australian grain, that will really help build that knowledge base, as does projects like GPSA's baselining project. We have a great story to tell, so rather than pushing back, let's collaborate and help inform the supply chain and make it really effective for everyone. Premium markets for verified grain, I think there'll be a higher level of scrutiny and verification required. The value proposition is really important. I guess where we've looked at it is we want to position ourselves to take advantage of any opportunities, but also mitigate any risks to market access in the future. Sustainable aviation fuel, I think SA's in a great spot if we could get that moving with our legume growing and low emissions intensity. So excited to hear if Toby's got anything to mention about that. ISCC, so we get a premium for being part of the ISCC program. We don't have to show farm level emissions, but as a country, so CSIRO do that reporting for us and show on a state basis that our emissions are 50% lower compared to petroleum-based fuels. Cargill Sustain Connect, Ollie talked about, hard to find a activity that not already doing, but I know they're going to add more activities in the future. So I think that's really exciting when you've got companies like Cargill coming out with those programs with a financial incentive. Productivity increases are so closely correlated with reducing emissions intensity. The latest, the update to that baseline report had reduction of 60% of emissions since 2005 in emissions intensity. So increases in productivity, our genetics have been amazing, which is fantastic. So my key messages, be ready, streamline, and seek the benefit. And finally, in SA, our low emissions profile is a real selling point, but the proof will be in the data. So let's make that proof work for us, not against us, which is a great segue into the next session with Janine and Nick. Happy to answer any. I'm not sure if we've got time for questions, but I'm always really keen to talk sustainability and emissions with farmers or those in the supply chain and hear about your journey, what challenges you're having and how you're dealing with them. So please reach out at afternoon tea or if you've got any questions now. Thank you.
Thank you. If we do have time for questions, there is a roving mic. So.
Kate, I note you're presenting 5-year averages
Yep.
for your footprint. Can you comment on how much fluctuation you see from one year to the next? Do you think companies will ever want to see data from a single year, or will they always want averages?
Yeah, I think it will be really interesting. The little bits that I've heard from the sustainable aviation fuel have been, well, there'll be a threshold and you have to be under that, and they are throwing around maybe to be a 5-year average, because I've had some tech people say to me, oh, well, you'll just be able to, when you deliver that load of grain, you'll be able to tell them the emissions intensity of that load of grain. It's like, well, you need to finish roofing the paddock, and you need, it's hard to get real-time emissions intensity data for grain. So I think that's difficult. I think that will be, to me, the 5-year average, I think actually makes more sense, because what we want to do is reduce emissions and incentivise practice change, and not just have good emissions intensity in a single year because of the conditions. So I'd like to see a 5-year average is what I'd like to see.
Okay, thanks for your presentation. You mentioned that you did the emissions accounting at the paddock level. Did I understand that right? And what's the benefit of doing that rather than at the whole farm?
Yeah, so obviously we do the whole farm as well, but we're trying to really understand what's driving our emissions and differences in those emissions. So we want to get a big enough data set so that we can say, if we have lentils rather than fava beans 2 years earlier, and just work out which things are actually changing, but we need a big enough data set over enough years to probably draw those conclusions. So that's what we're using it for. There isn't any market driver for that at the moment. It's really for us to understand what's causing those movements. Yeah.
Any last question?